Story. Muscovites and experts alike tend to accept corruption as a fact of life. It's sad, but it's true. The general consensus seems to be that it's futile to fight it, and it's actually wiser to learn how to live with it.
Yet while the consequences of fighting corruption can make life pretty difficult, some are not giving up. Primetime's Ivor Bennett went to meet them.
Corruption is endemic here in Russian society. I don't think there's much you can do about it.
John Warren used to fight corruption. He says it made his life hell. Now he factors in kickbacks as just another business expense.
I don't think anybody would not give a bribe to a state official, other than the most principled, who probably are just a little bit stupid. I mean, you know, we all want to get on in life.
Corruption in Russia is like an open secret. Although the government says it's tackling the issue, many feel it's just scratching the surface. So I've come to a busy area in Moscow to dig a little deeper and find out what ordinary people have to say.
Even with communism, we didn't have as much corruption as we have now.
We face corruption every day in our lives and have done ever since I remember. It's only gotten worse since the 90s.
To fight corruption is absolutely useless. It's much better to just give up and pay.
These people are some of the few that are still fighting. They're used to being ignored. Here, though, it was unexpected. They've come to an independent complaint centre that says it will tackle the system for them. But instead of listening to the problems, the committee began by shutting them out to hold an hour-long press conference. Some have been waiting decades for justice. Here, it was more of the same.
I doubt they'll be able to help me, but there's a 1% chance they will. The hope is always there, it dies last, but I know this is the last chance.
80-year-old Galina was promised an 18-square-metre flat by the state when she moved to Moscow in 1988. For the last 23 years, she's lived in one room of just 13 square metres. She says they told her it would be temporary.
My lawyer was bought by the other side. He even told me that openly. He said, "You didn't give me anything," and they did. "If you have the money, you'll be all right. If you don't, you'll lose." You think it wasn't obvious to the judge that I was in the right here?
The anti-corruption group's called Clean Hands and includes prominent human rights lawyers. It travels around the country listening to people's stories before investigating the evidence. Any corruption is published, forcing the authorities to react. Despite its indifference to begin with here, its reputation goes before it.
A cement plant was being built illegally. The citizens were being poisoned, and the authorities were not reacting. We made this fact public, and the plant was shut down.
The victims leave empty-handed for now and won't hear anything for a month. But any result will be worth the wait in what's been a long and futile fight. Ivor Bennett, Primetime Russia, RT.
Meanwhile, giving or taking bribes in Russia could soon lead to international prosecution under the UK's new Bribery Act. Russians who have businesses in the UK and are involved in corruption at home can be prosecuted in Great Britain.
The Act comes into force in July, and earlier we talked to Dmitry Dementyev from Magisters law firm about its significance. How do you think this is going to affect relationships and business between the countries? I mean, what kind of behaviour are people going to be expressly kind of forbidding and encouraging people to behave in certain ways?
Many experts tend to interpret UK Bribery Act or Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the analogy of UK Bribery Act in the United States, as a very politically motivated legal mechanism. We're actually witnessing the creation of a regime, anti-corruption legal regime. You really want to follow the rules if you're a major international company. Most likely you're a public company with your securities listed either on New York Stock Exchange or London Stock Exchange. You got to play by the rules.
Could you give us a short, comprehensive list of what should companies do, and maybe what should they avoid then, if this is going global?
Bribery is not as simple as you may think under FCPA UK Bribery Act. It's not simply giving money in a suitcase. It's paying extra for that business trip. for a state official, even in the situations where you contribute money to a charity. And a
person... Bribery is very sophisticated.
It's very sophisticated. Well, listen to this. If you want to be charitable, you make a donation to a charity organization, and the guy who's one of the people who's running a charity happens to be a relative of a state official who is responsible for giving you a license.
So catching these people, it sounds, is going to be quite difficult given the sophisticated techniques employed. But if people do violate anti-bribery laws, what would the repercussions be?
Well, the risks are quite significant. I think the most common risk that you see when it comes to FCPA enforcement, and we'll see it, I think, in the UK Bribery Act enforcement, is criminal fines. Really, it's they can come up to billions of dollars. Criminal liability is not only fines. It's in many circumstances in U.S. and in EU, it's debarment. You cannot do business with the government. You can't be part of state contracts. The company's reputation takes a hit.
What are the chances that the US Department of Justice and the UK Serious Fraud Office will ever find out about anything shady going on?
What are the chances? I see in the doorway there's a DOJ department, some representative of the US Department of Justice coming in, starts going through my files, my computer retrieving files. What are the chances? Well, pretty remote. The most appropriate way of gathering information, the official ways properly, for example, for U.S. DOJ is to use the so-called MLATs, Mutual Legal Assistance Treaties. I think recent cases, some of the recent enforcement cases in the U.S. showed that sometimes the cooperation is pretty difficult, but that may improve. Why? Because Russia plans to be part of the WTO, World Trade Organization. Part of the accession process, Russia has to sign up to that anti-bribery OECD convention. Competitors or whistleblowers, your favorite company employees who can just release that information and send that email to the DOJ might trigger an investigation.
A spy network.
Well, pretty much. And if you're pressed by DOJ, you'd be surprised what you do.
Fascinating developments. We're talking to corporate compliance expert from CIS law firm Magisters, Dmitry Dementyev. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
That was
Thank you.
Truly entertaining.